In this video, I will be talking about UTXO management. I encourage you to sit down and really listen carefully as I discuss how small UTXOs can ruin your Bitcoin stack in a high fee environment. I will also talk about how you can prepare your UTXO set for a high fee environment and how you can do that without compromising your privacy. I just want to say thanks to Wicked on Twitter for inspiring this video. He's been talking a lot about UTXOs on Twitter, and it pushed me to make this video to clear everything up. Firstly, what is a UTXO? UTXO stands for unspent output, and that's exactly what it is. It is the output of a Bitcoin transaction that has not been spent. Every time you receive Bitcoin, you receive a new UTXO or a new chunk of Bitcoin. To understand better, let's take a look in our Sparrow wallet and on the blockchain. Here I have a wallet open in Sparrow in testnet. And what I'm going to do is quickly receive some Bitcoin. So to do this, I'm going to click receive. And then here's my address. And I'm going to always give it a label. I always recommend you do that. I'm going to set that as exchange A and copy this address. And now I'm going to quickly send about 10,000 sats to this address from my other testnet wallet. All right, so I've just created a new transaction here. And if we open my wallet and then go to transactions, we'll see we have one transaction here for 10k sats. So I've gone ahead and received 10k sats into this wallet. And now if we go over to UTXOs, we can see I have one UTXO with a value of 10,000 Satoshis. Now here on mempool.space, this is our transaction where we just received these coins. And we can see that it has two outputs on the right over here. And this is where I received the coins now. I received 10,000 sats to this address. Now, this is one of the outputs of this transaction, and I haven't spent this Bitcoin yet. It's still sitting in my wallet, which makes it an unspent output or UTXO. So I have one UTXO sitting here in my wallet. Now what I'm going to do is send another 20k sats to this new wallet of mine. So I'm going to click receive. All right, so I've sent another 20k sats to this wallet of mine. So if I go to UTXOs, we'll notice we now have two UTXOs. The first one for 10k sats, and now we have this one for 20k sats. And again, if we view this transaction and then we open it in mempool.space, we'll see that if we scroll down, it has two outputs. This is my address that I received the coins in, and we can see it received 20k sats. Now, this is an output of a transaction. As we can see, inputs and outputs. These are the outputs. And now if I go to my wallet, we can see this output is sitting in my wallet and it's unspent, making it a unspent output or a UTXO. I'm going to send a few more UTXOs to this wallet. I'll do that off camera and I'll be back with multiple UTXOs in this wallet. I have now sent 6 different transactions to this wallet of mine. Here we can see all 6. And if I go to my UTXOs tab, here we can see all 6 UTXOs. So all these chunks of Bitcoin are all outputs of separate Bitcoin transactions that I have not yet spent. They are unspent outputs or UTXOs. Every time you receive Bitcoin, you get a new UTXO, and all your UTXOs together make your wallet's balance. So here we can see I've got 25k, 20k, 20k, 15k, 10k and 10k sats, and altogether my balance is 100k sats. And just a reminder, it is always best practice to use a new address for each transaction or each time you receive new Bitcoin, and it's also best to label your transactions. So here I've set a few example labels: exchange A, exchange B, and no KYC. Now that we know what a UTXO is, and we've got a few UTXOs in my wallet over here, let's talk about why we want to manage our UTXOs in the case of a high fee environment. First, you must understand that every time you spend Bitcoin, you have to pay a network fee. Bitcoin has a limited transaction throughput, meaning people have to compete to be in the next Bitcoin block by paying higher fees. So when the network gets congested and many people are trying to transact, the fees tend to spike and they can go up by quite a lot. If Bitcoin continues to grow and gain more users over time, we can expect fees to become high in the future. So high that small UTXOs become unspendable And now I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Let's assume I need to spend 10,000 sats. So here I have a UTXO for 10,000 sats. So if we click send selected, I'm going to paste in an address and set a label as test. Now, whenever you send Bitcoin, like I mentioned earlier, you will need to pay a fee. Right now, the fee is set to 1 sat per byte because this is testnet and there isn't really a fee market for that. But if we take a look at mempool.space, we can see that on the main network, right now, people are paying about 17 sats per byte. So if this was a real Bitcoin transaction, I would have to pay about 17 sats per byte, which would cost me 2,000 sats. That means to spend this 10K UTXO of mine, I would have to pay a 20% fee in order for this transaction to confirm. But now what if things got really bad and fees spiked to say 500 sats per byte? If I push this up all the way to 400 sats per byte, we can see my fee is now 9,500 sats and I have insufficient funds to spend this UTXO. While editing this video, I thought that I would add that this UTXO actually becomes unspendable at around 88 sats per byte. So fees don't need to spike up to 400 sat per byte to make this 10K sat UTXO essentially worthless. So if fees go super high, the small UTXO is so small that I can't spend it because the fee is greater than the actual UTXO. This means that if fees were to ever go this high, and we've seen them go high before, I would not be able to spend this Bitcoin. Now that's the first reason why you don't want a bunch of small UTXOs. Let's take a look at another reason why you don't want many of these tiny UTXOs. If I go to UTXOs again, and let's assume we need to spend 60,000 Satoshis rather than just 10,000. I'm going to click Command and select a whole bunch of UTXOs. This one, this one, this one, and this one, and one more. And I'm going to click Send Selected. Now I need to spend all these UTXOs so that I have more than 60,000 sats. But Bitcoin is priced in sats per byte. So you pay per space you take up on the blockchain. Now that I've got more inputs on the left here, I'm going to take up a lot more space. And because my UTXOs are so small, I'm forced to use many of them, which is going to take up a lot of space on the blockchain. Now again, let's assume we need to spend 60,000 sats, and let's assume the fee rate is about, let's say 20 sats per byte. Then my fee will be 8,000 sats, which is how much? 12% of the entire balance. Now what if fees got super high? Let's say fees went past 200 sats per byte. We can see I already have insufficient funds to spend this Bitcoin. I've quickly gone ahead and sent myself another UTXO of 60,000 sats. Now we'll see if I click on this and then click Send Selected, we only have one output because we have a big UTXO. We don't need to combine a whole bunch of small ones. And here we can see if I set the fee back to 20 sats per byte, my fee is only 3% versus 12% earlier. Now the point I'm trying to make is that if you have many inputs on the left over here, your transaction fees are going to be a lot higher because you pay per space you take on the blockchain. And if you have many small UTXOs, you will be forced to select many UTXOs in order to spend them. So it is always preferable to have fewer inputs on the left side over here because then you pay less fees. To make my point crystal clear, I'm going to select 1.01 sats per byte, and we can see when I have one input, my fee is 110 sats. But if I go to UTXOs and I select all the small ones again, just like that, and then click Send Selected, now if I set my fee to 1 sat per byte, I'm paying 380 sats. And this will obviously get worse if we have more inputs on the left here. So if we had 50 UTXOs as an input, the fee would be extremely high on this transaction, and it will make a whole bunch of our UTXOs essentially unspendable. As you can see, it is not optimal to have a whole bunch of small UTXOs in a high fee environment. So next I'm going to show you how to actually prepare your UTXO set for a high fee environment. And the answer is to consolidate all your UTXOs together into a new, bigger UTXO. So I'm going to go back to my UTXOs tab over here and just click clear. And here we can see all my UTXOs. Now, before we consolidate our UTXOs into bigger ones, let me first talk about privacy. For privacy reasons, we don't want to select all our UTXOs and consolidate them all together because that's just terrible for your privacy. The reason this is bad for your privacy is because imagine all your Bitcoin is sitting in one address. Every time you spend that Bitcoin, the person who is receiving it can look on the blockchain and see your entire balance. So imagine this. Imagine I have one Bitcoin in address A and I send it to my friend Bob. I send him 0.2 Bitcoin. He can look on the blockchain and he can go back one hop and he can see, oh, Cole has one Bitcoin, which is a security risk and it's just terrible for your privacy. We also want to avoid consolidating UTXOs from different sources. For example, if I have no KYC Bitcoin here and I have KYC Bitcoin from an exchange, I don't want to mix them together because then the exchange can see on chain this other Bitcoin that I potentially have. So when you join your Bitcoin together, chain analysis companies assume that all the Bitcoin belongs to a common owner. So if I consolidate all this Bitcoin together, someone from exchange A can see that I've joined all this together and they can assume that I own 160,000 sats. Now this isn't too bad with a small balance like this, but if you're dealing with quite a bit of Bitcoin, doing this can be super bad for your privacy. So now that we understand the privacy risks and the privacy concerns I have with consolidating your UTXOs, let me show you how to actually go ahead and do that and how to be prepared for a high fee environment. First, we need to click receive in the same wallet. So here I am clicking receive and here is my address. What I'm going to do is set the label consolidate KYC. So all my KYC coins are going to go to this address. I'm going to copy this and now go back to my UTXOs. Now what I'm going to do is click command on my computer and then I'm going to select all the UTXOs that have come from an exchange. So exchange A, B, and A. Now I've selected all my KYC UTXOs. You may want to separate your exchange UTXOs. So for example, we would do exchange A in one consolidation transaction and we would do exchange B in another consolidation transaction. The reason I'm consolidating all four is because I have a tiny amount of sats here. So I've selected all the KYC stuff. I click send selected. Now I'm going to paste my Bitcoin address that I just copied and I'm going to say consolidate. And this will be a self-spend, of course. I'm going to select the maximum amount, which it's already set to, and then you'd set your fee to whatever the current fee rate is. I'm on testnet, so I'll do 1 sat per byte. Cool, so now as we can see, we'll be turning 1, 2, 3, 4 smaller UTXOs into one bigger UTXO. So I'm going to click create, finalize for signing, sign, and then broadcast. And now if we go over to our wallet, then go to UTXOs, we'll see we now only have 4 UTXOs. And before I think we had 6 or 7 UTXOs. Next, I'm going to consolidate all my no KYC Bitcoin. So again, I'm going to click receive over here. And then I'm going to set a label to consolidate no KYC. Now I'm going to copy this address, go back to my UTXOs, and then I'm going to select all the no KYC UTXOs. So again, I click command, then I select these 3, and then I click send selected. I paste my address in, and I'm going to set a label of consolidate no KYC. And here we can see we're turning 1, 2, 3 UTXOs into one UTXO. This is just the fee, so we can ignore that. I'm going to click create transaction and sign that and click broadcast. Now if we close here in my original wallet, if I go to UTXOs, we can see we only have 2 UTXOs now rather than the 6 we had earlier. And you'll also notice that the balances of each of these UTXOs is much higher. So before we had 10k sats, 10k sats, 15k sats, 20k sats, but now we have one for 95,000 sats more or less and one for 65,000 sats. While editing this video, I realized that I left out another way in which you can combine your UTXOs together into bigger UTXOs, and that is by mixing or coin joining your Bitcoin. This is a great idea because firstly, you can combine your UTXOs into bigger ones, and secondly, you get a new set of UTXOs with improved privacy. Sparrow Wallet has a CoinJoin tool built inside of it, so it makes it really easy to do this. I have a separate video on how you can CoinJoin your funds within Sparrow Wallet, so I suggest you go ahead and watch that, but I'll show you a brief example of what this would look like. Here in this same wallet again, I have 4 UTXOs with 40k sats each, and then I have another 4 UTXOs with 20k sats. What I'm going to do is click select all, then click mix selected. Now you would need to select a fee. Again, I covered that in the other video, so go ahead and watch that. But I'm going to set this to low, click next, and now I get to select the pool size. So I can only enter the smallest pool size with the amount of sats I have here. So I'm going to click 100k sats, then preview premix, and this is what it would look like on chain. So I would have 8 inputs going into this coin join, then I would have 5 outputs, but only 3 of them would belong to me. So after this coin join, I would have turned 8 UTXOs into 3 UTXOs, because this fee is going to be paid to the Whirlpool coordinator, and this fee is to the network. So I'll have this UTXO to be mixed, this UTXO to be mixed, and then I'll receive some unmixed change. Again, I cover all of this in a separate video, so I suggest you go ahead and watch that if you wish to coin join your funds. Okay, back to the main video. Another thing I want to talk about is how big should your UTXOs be? Because I've only consolidated 65,000 sats and 95,000 sats. You'll probably want to make your UTXOs much bigger than that. The size of your UTXOs does depend on your stack size. If you're dealing with thousands of dollars, you might want your minimum UTXO size to be maybe 0.01 Bitcoin, which is 1 million Satoshis. If you have a whole Bitcoin, maybe you want 10 UTXOs of 0.1 BTC each, or maybe you want 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, and the rest 0.1 UTXOs. If you're only dealing with $50, I would say this is fine having 2 UTXOs. Remember that the goal here is to have as few UTXOs as possible, so that when we need to spend our Bitcoin, we have as few inputs as possible. Because in a high fee environment, having many inputs can cost a lot of fees. And that is how to manage your UTXO set in preparation for a high fee environment. There may be a few questions that I did not answer in this video, so if you have a question, just leave it down below and I'll try to get back to all of you. And if you found this video valuable, liking and subscribing is free, and you can also send a tip if you wish below. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers everyone.